From the Golden One Center, Gleason and Draper Drive, guys, getting ready, of course, for the Kings and the Wizards, but we're still basking in the afterglow of what went down Saturday night here. Keegan Murray's 47-point effort and the Kings win over the Jazz. Nice enough to join us. He was on the TV call, the master of play-by-play for the Kings, Mark Jones, with us. Mark, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. What do you think you're going to remember the most about Saturday night here at the Golden One Center?
Man, in the second half, guys, when he stayed on that heater, I'm going to remember just the calm with which he was playing with, and, you know, the steady, stoic disposition etched on his countenance, on his face. He didn't show any emotion, and to be on that kind of roll and to not still remain Keegan Murray, you know what I mean? It was pretty amazing. And when I think about, you know, I've called Steph Curry's then career high 54 points at Madison Square Garden back in 2014. I called two of James Harden's 50-point triple doubles when he was with Houston. I've called a couple of 50 balls of LeBron James and 25-point quarters in the playoffs by LeBron. This was right up there with them. I mean, to shoot it with the efficiency that he did, you know, it was a regular season game, but still, that was very, very amazing for a guy who, by the way, on the other end, had a pretty heavy defensive assignment as well. So that's about as complete a game as you'll see a guy play at the offensive and defensive end.
Mark Jones joining us. Mark, it's your boy Drapes. You know, one thing when I look back at what I saw Saturday night from Keegan, you know, like you mentioned, you've seen other players have great nights, but knowing Keegan like we do, his quiet, mild-mannered self, almost kind of, you know, egoless, you know, in terms of the way he approaches the game. He knows he's good. He knows he can get buckets, but to see him black out like that, like he did, he has like a quiet assassin, a silent killer kind of vibe when he's out there on the floor, I feel like.
Yeah, he really does. And it's interesting, you know, guys, you know, if you watch and you really know, like, the Kings don't call a lot of plays for Keegan, right? He's our best shooter, arguably, but they don't call a lot of designated plays for him per se. You know, if you watch the start of games, watch a beginning of second halves, ATOs, sometimes they'll go to other guys, but Keegan is a guy that always gets it in the flow. And that's what really kind of turned me on about his performance. And obviously, once he's in that kind of flow, then the guys start looking for him, and they became, I think, a little bit more purposeful and intentional about getting him some shots. There had to be, you know, after he had made 7-8 in a row, you know, there had to come a time where, hey, he has to at least get a touch, and it proved to be great decisions. And he didn't pass any up. He didn't pass any up, and Mike wasn't cursing him on the sidelines, right? He didn't pass any shots up, because usually, you know, Kyle, you and I have a great vantage point down there courtside. When he passes up some shots, Mike automatically looks down his bench for somebody to come in for him.
Oh, yeah.
As a way to scold him. He didn't have to do that a couple nights ago.
Yeah, excuse me, Mark. Mark Jones with us here, Sactown Sports. You guys correct me if I'm wrong, but when Keegan came out of college, you know, he was seen as a 3-level scorer, and he was a very good three-point shooter. But I don't think anybody anticipated he would be this good of a three-point shooter. You know, last year setting the rookie record, this year threatening the single-game record. Is he maybe a better three-point shooter so far in the NBA than people expected he would be at this point?
I think there's no question about it. I mean, during the game a couple of nights ago, during commercial, I was checking my phone, and I got 2 texts from NBA assistant coaches and 3 texts from players, and one of them a former player, who were out of their mind with what he was doing. So that's the gravity of what he was doing. You have to remember, Keegan took a big leap in his three-point percentage from his senior year to then his first year in the NBA. And, you know, the thing that was glaring, I think, on the scouting report where guys really went wrong with him was one of my buddies that is a scout told me that he was rated in the lower third of quote-unquote top athletes in the draft. And, man, were they wrong on that one, because we've seen him slam it on a few guys and slap it on a few guys this year. So scouting is an art form, rarely perfect, right?
You're right about that, Mark Jones. Mark, as great as Keegan is, I love the fact that Mike Brown, as his coach, is asking him to be a two-way player. We know he can score. We saw that last season. But for Mike Brown to say, you know what, I'm going to put you on Steph Curry. I'm going to put you on Donovan Mitchell. I'm going to put you on this person, shows me that Mike Brown is pushing these guys harder than maybe even fans are asking for. Speak to that, if you will.
Yeah, well, that's why if you just look at analytics and numbers, they really lie to you. And right now, if you look at the analytics and numbers, it says that the Kings' offense is 14th, their defense is 15th. That doesn't tell the whole story about where this team is. Mike would rather be 14th and 50th in offense and defense than be first in offense and 25th in defensive rating like we were a season ago. Thus, the emphasis on the defensive end for guys like Keegan Murray, and he's a shining example. So is Kevin Huerter, which has gone under the radar. Murray's a great example of some of the physicality that's being required, and it took an early toll on his shooting percentages, but he's now crept up to about 35% after that performance a couple of nights ago. And here's something, too, that you're not going to hear or read a lot of other places. A lot of the credit has to go to assistant coach Dutch Gately. And I had a great conversation with Dutch the other day, and part of arming Keegan for some of these high-end elite defensive assignments that he's getting is teaching him not just to chest up on guys, but how to close out on guys. He was correcting Keegan the other day on using his right hand to close out on a player on the left wing so as to protect the middle, because we're a no-middle team to send it baseline. Now he's got Keegan using his left hand on right-handed shooters on closeouts, and that's made a big difference, too, in some of the subtlety that he's been able to be successful with defensively. So kudos to assistant coach Dutch Gately, who's done a fantastic job with Keegan, not just at the offensive end, but the defensive end. And, last year this time we were talking about Chris Middleton perhaps being the comp for Keegan. I think you got to raise the ceiling now to the comp being perhaps Paul George.
Yeah. Mark Jones with us here. Drive Guys. Mark, I think if somebody asked me, someone who didn't know this team asked me to give one word that would describe this team, one of the first words that would come to mind for me is unselfish. And I think we saw that in the game. It was remarkable to see, and they're smart players, I understand, but the way people were looking for Keegan in that third quarter, the way his teammates responded, how genuinely happy they were. What did that night say, not only about Keegan, but about the culture of this team?
Man, we saw it in real time last year how Mike Brown alchemized a franchise that was really lacking in an identity. And that's who we are now in Sacramento. It's a group of selfless, sacrificing players that do it for the greater good. I mean, you look at, last year or any time, DeAaron Fox could go out and get 40 every game, okay? Domas Sabonis could go out and get 25, 27, and 12 every game. But that's not the way that we play. That's not the way that this is built. When Mike brought his offense here to Sacramento, he made sure that it was going to be a very egalitarian offense. Everybody gets a touch, a lot of passing, a lot of moving. That has become our identity. But now in year two, Mike has subtly evolved the offense to where he's preparing for more playoff success. This year, he's being a little bit more intent on hunting mismatches with Jake Triano, the assistant coach, to take advantage of that, because in the playoffs, the game changes a little bit. And last year, I don't think we were quite ready for that. Experience is a part of it, but the things that Sacramento's doing now offensively will prepare us for down the road, and the selflessness component of it still remains. That's the big benefit.
Mark Jones joining us. Mark was on the call Saturday night. Mark, I want to switch gears and talk a little bit about DeAaron Fox, because on the pregame show the other day, we had the NBA.com MVP rankings. And we know a lot of people in the league office, a lot of people that cover the league. And DeAaron wasn't even in the top 10 on NBA.com, their MVP ladder. What's going on, man? What's that like? What does it take for this guy to finally get some acknowledgement out there, some love?
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Like, listen, I've lived on the East Coast for the majority of my life up until the last 4 years now. And, I consider myself a basketball junkie, right? Like, I don't go to bed until 1 a.m. on the East Coast because I stay up and watch all those West Coast games. But, other media types with obligations to get stories in or be on air with something they may not watch. That's why I think my coworker at ESPN, Richard Jefferson, tried to jam me up and accused me of being a homer earlier this year during one of our Kings games. And I said 2.5 months ago during the preseason game, we did a Golden One, said, Richard, this guy will be a top 5 candidate. That's the way he's tracking. And if people are watching and listening, they'll notice. If they're not watching and listening, it'll be a case like last year where we get to April and people say, wow, this little Sacramento team's really good. It reminds you of that Drake album cover that says, if you're reading this, it's too late. and that's kind of the deal. But DeAaron's game is so dynamic and it's so spectacular, and he's doing it in the context of winning. I'm not sure why more people aren't noticing. And you consider the fact that he punctuates a lot of Sacramento's wins with clutch performances. It's even more reason for the spotlight to be on him. But, listen, there's an old saying that a lie runs a marathon before the truth gets out of bed, right? So the history of the franchise might be hurting DeAaron a little bit in that context. But, hey, listen, I know when I get on my Christmas game, I'm going to find a way to talk about DeAaron Fox during my ESPN broadcast. when I'm calling that Miami Heat Philadelphia game Christmas night at 8:00, and we come out of a promo for the Sacramento Kings, it's going to be on. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mark always giving the squad love nationally. I appreciate that, man.
I'm just doing a public service, man. I don't want people to be in the dark. You can bring truth to light sometimes. It needs a little help.
Opening some eyes, that's all. Yeah, thank you, Mark. We appreciate your time very much. Hope to talk to you again soon.
You got it, guys. Go Kings.
All right, Mark. All right, man.
Mark Jones had the play-by-play Saturday. Tonight, Kyle Draper with the call for the Kings against the Wizards.
Yeah.